the online event for Americans planning their move to France. Whether your bags are already prepared or you're simply planning for the future, you're in the right place today. And throughout the week, we will give you on the insights, tools and inspiration to turn your dream of living in France into reality. I'm Clément Mercier, Commercial Director for Frenchly.us. If you're here today, you're probably familiar with us. We are the Francophile news and culture magazine bringing the best of France to readers in the US and beyond. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. Today, we kick off this first session with covering all the essential topics you need to know, everything for navigating visa, French bureaucracy, which is a lot, financial planning, international money transfer, and property management. Over the rest of the week, we will take you on a tour de France of the region, sharing insight and testimonials from local experts and American residents to give you true sense of the life across the country. We are live, as you noticed, because I was muted, but so feel free to ask your questions to our experts. They are here for that, so you can simply use the chat. We will also share the sessions on replay, and you will see during the live QR codes to directly contact our experts. Now, let me just introduce you our amazing expert who will give you and guide you today. Allison Lounes, founder of Your Franceformation. Thank you for coming with us. They are zero relocation and visas expert. Allison is an American who made her own dream to moving to France a reality. And since then, and over a decade, she has been helping other Americans navigate visas, bureaucracy, and practical and emotional sides of relocation, which is a big thing, providing a fully personalized support to ensure smooth and confident transition into your French life. Thank you, Allison, for being with us. She's also the author of Foolproof French Visas. It's pretty dense, I'm telling you, so you better ask Allison for some help. Thank you, Allison. Also born and raised in the US, Alex Ingrim is the founder and CEO of Liberty Atlantic, with over 15 years of international experience living in France and across Europe. He's specialized in helping Americans abroad navigate complex financial, tax, and cross-border planning with clarity and expertise, which is something. Alex, thank you for joining us today. Hélène van Dijn from Currency Direct will be our money transfer expert. Currency Direct is founded in 1996. It's a multi-award winning global money transfer provider with over 500,000 customers and presence in more than 25 countries. And Hélène and her team will help you to save time and money by transferring your funds. And last but not least, Tom Easdown, Managing Director and Architect for French Plans. Tom leads a team of English-speaking architects and planning consultants with over 20 years of experience. They provide a full design and planning service across France, managing all types of application, from minor renovation to large-scale development, like a castle if you dream big. Thank you, Tom, to be with us today as well. And together they will turn your dream of living to France into a plan you can act on. Let's get started. But just before that, I would like to take a quick moment to thank the partners who made living the French dream possible. And let's roll a short video to hear more about them and the expertise they bring to support your journey to France.
Bonjour and welcome. I'm Allison Lounes, founder of Your Franceformation, and we're thrilled to be sponsoring this year's Dream Life in France Summit with Frenchly. At Your Franceformation, we help individuals, couples, and families turn their dream of living in France into reality with expert support for visa applications, relocation planning, and everything that comes after you arrive in France. Whether you're just starting to explore your move or you're ready to take the leap, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Start by checking out our book, Foolproof French Visas, and attending one of our free monthly Q&A sessions. and let's start making your dream life in France happen together.
And we are ready to start. Allison, I give you the mic and we can start with all the visas and relocation questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be sponsoring this event. I am really excited to share about French visas with you. Now, I've got about 15 minutes. The Foolproof French Visas book is 462 pages. So this is going to be but a mere, flyby on the visa types that exist, what you need to know before you then further your information by coming to one of our Q&As, reading the book, etc. So we're going to talk about visa options for moving to France. I just want to give you a little bit of background on myself and your Franceformation. I have been doing some type of relocation work for a little over 10 years. Your Franceformation will be celebrating its 5th year in 2026. We provide comprehensive relocation packages, and our goal is to help you get the right visa, do all the right French admin to ensure that you have a successful and sustainable move to France. Getting the right visa is only the beginning of setting up your life in France, and it's the first step of many that you'll have to take, including, getting the right financial planning information and taxes, buying property, finding housing, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot to do in the lead up to a move to France, and then during your first year and for several years in France to make your move successful long term. And it's really important that you have the right people to guide you through it. Now, I want to start with why it's important to get the right visa. You want to make sure that the visa that you're applying for aligns with your long-term plan for living in France. Not all visa types are going to enable you to get a 10-year residence card or apply for naturalization if those are things that you eventually want to do. There are some are very temporary that you may be able to renew once or twice. There are some that are more longer term. So depending on the type of work that you want to do and the length of time you want to spend in France, you're going to want to adapt your visa strategy to make sure that you're picking the right visa type. We have noticed as well, especially recently, increased scrutiny of renewals for people, especially if you're on a non-working visa type. We're going to get into this in a minute, but there's no digital nomad visa for France. It's not possible to work remotely in France if you don't have a visa enabling you to work and a proper setup so that you can pay all the correct taxes and social charges. And they're really cracking down at the prefecture on making sure that whatever income you have and whatever type of work that you're doing aligns with the visa type that you request. So you'll want to understand the specifics of your rights and obligations that go along with the visa type that you have. And those are all covered in the Foolproof French Visas book. So it's important to know that if you don't live in France and you don't have a visa to live in France, you have to follow the 90 out of 180-day rule to travel in the Schengen area. That means that during any consecutive 180-day period, you spend a maximum of 90 days inside the Schengen space, all countries combined. It's not possible to live in France full-time and be a tax resident elsewhere. There's no such thing as spending a limited amount of time in various countries to not be a tax resident anywhere. And so if you don't want to establish tax residence in France based on what you're going to talk about with Alex and financial planning reasons, then you're going to have to be mindful of how much time you spend in France and the type of visa you obtain or renew. We're going to go through 5 really quick visa type categories. There are about 30 visa types covered in the Foolproof French Visas book. First, we're going to talk about visitor and temporary visas, which are going to be for retirement if you don't need to work. We're going to talk very briefly about salaried visa options. We don't work a lot with these because typically people have to have a job contract and be sponsored by a company in order to get a salaried work visa. We're going to talk about a couple options for working remotely if that's something that you want to do and make sure that it's legitimate and gives you a long-term path to stay in France. And we're going to talk about self-employment, which is a lot of the clients that we work with who are either
self-employed in their own names or starting businesses because they want to continue being self-employed. They want to earn money, but they don't feel like getting sponsored for a job is something that's going to happen for them. We'll touch very briefly, if we have time, on family visas and carte de séjour for spouses of French or EU citizens. Those give you a lot of rights to work and live in France long term, and will be a little bit more flexible in what you need for financial resources and things like that. So visitor and temporary visas are for people who do not want to work, who have no intention of working, for anyone, anywhere. And you sign a commitment at the visa in the visa application itself that you will not have any professional activity while you're residing in France. As I mentioned earlier, the prefectures have gotten really strict with renewals, asking people to provide evidence of where their income comes from, so that, for people who have been working remotely illegally, who may have gotten away with it because the prefecture wasn't paying close attention, now they're paying attention. A visitor visa is going to be renewable and will establish tax residence from the day you arrive in France to reside. There is such thing as a temporary visa for up to 12 months, which is not renewable or extendable in France. So sometimes if you want to avoid some of the tax and residency issues, you want to come for less than a year, you're not planning on staying long term, that can be an option. Salaried visa options. There are a couple different salaried visa options, from travailleur temporaire, salarié, passeport talent salarié, and salarié hautement qualifié. So those four imply you have a French work contract. The different visa type is going to depend on whether you have a long-term or a defined term contract, how high the salary is, and whether or not you have a French degree. So for those visa types, you may have to have a master's degree from a French university, for example. You may have to have a salary above a certain limit. Many of the salary requirements are quite high, meaning that you have to be earning more than 80 to 90% of French people in order to qualify for these visa types. 90% of French salaried employees earn less than 37,000 euros per year. For hautement qualifié, a European blue card visa, for example, you have to be earning a salary of 54,000 euros per year. If your salary is below that, or you don't have the right degree, the company has to request work authorization, which basically means they have to prove that there was nobody else already authorized in France that they could find to hire for that particular job. So this can take a long time. There are people who can help you work with recruiters to find jobs if you have particular skills, but it's really not straightforward to get sponsored for a work visa. If you want to be self-employed, there are a couple of options. There's profession libérale, which is going to be just self-employed in your own name. Typically, you're going to be earning about 77,000 euros per year as a maximum. You're not allowed to deduct expenses, and you need to show that you have potential clients in France in order to get this visa. There's also, you can set up a French company and go for création d'entreprise. If you're a visual or performing artist, you have the profession artistique option, and sometimes we use something called a portage salarial, which is an employer of record in France, so that you can continue to be salaried for a foreign employer, but through the confines of a French company. And that can help you to facilitate your visa as a salaried employee without running afoul of the requirements that the foreign company might have to adhere to in order to have employees in France. The tax treaty between the US and France is very favorable, but it does state that earned income is going to be subject to French social charges and income tax first. So that's your business income, your self-employment income, your salary. So that's one of the main reasons why you're not really able to work remotely for a foreign employer and just get paid into your US bank account and pretend that everything is fine and dandy. And if you want to establish yourself in France long-term, then it's really not a good idea to play fast and loose with those rules. You can be sent by a foreign employer to France, either in secondment, which is an intercompany transfer visa. That's going to be for a maximum of 3 years, keeping your contract in your home country. There's also salarié en mission, which is being transferred but getting a local French contract and being in the French system and the French healthcare system and all of that. I already mentioned portage salarial, and then the most common thing that we work with is people who are, creating a company or self-employed so that they can invoice clients anywhere. I'll touch really briefly on this as well. If you are the spouse of a French citizen, you are going to be able to get a visa as a family member of a French citizen, which you can apply for before you relocate to France. If you're the spouse of an EU citizen, like an Italian, someone from Spain, Germany, whatever, and you want to come and reside in France together, you don't apply for a visa before you move. You apply for a carte de séjour within 90 days of arriving. And both of these will give you the right to work without restrictions as long as you're following French law. Again, if you want to work remotely for a foreign employer or something like that, you still have to set that up properly tax-wise, but your visa isn't tied, or your carte de séjour isn't tied to the type of employment or work authorization that you have. So very briefly, and I will get to some of your questions in the Q&A later, what we do is we offer relocation packages to help you to get the right visa type and then do the French admin to get established. So we prepare visa applications, we validate your visa, get you on the French healthcare system, set up your driver's license exchange, all of those kinds of things. Normally about 6 to 8 months before you move, if you're looking at being self-employed or starting a business. 3 to 4 months before you move if you're going to be a visitor or retired or not working. I offer paid consultations, and I have a special deal on the consultations for people who attend this event. And these are really useful. It's 1 hour where we develop your timeline. I ask you questions about your specific needs and what your goals are for living in France. And we talk through, what you could potentially do for your self-employment if that's the way you want to go, and just answer all of your logistical questions about living in France. If you're kind of close to when you want to start the process, you may want to start directly with a consultation. If you're a little bit farther out, you may want to start with foolproof French visas to understand the requirements of different visa types. And we have a lot of materials, free Q&As, and other resources to help you until you're ready to take action. So I would encourage you to sign up for our free Q&A on October 6th at 7 p.m. France time. You can schedule a consultation with me. And I look forward to answering your questions in the Q&A in just a few minutes. And here's a link to the Foolproof French Visas book. Is available on Amazon as a paperback or as an ebook on our website. And it's 462 pages and includes many details that I was not able to get into in the brief amount of time that we had. But thank you so much for attending this event and for your attention now, and I look forward to your questions. And thank you so much, Clément, and other speakers.
Thank you very much, Allison. We will just take a couple of questions. The first one is pretty good from Destiny, who is asking if the French bureaucracy is as bad as the Italian or the Portuguese one.
Actually, that might be a question, but that might be a better question for Alex, because he's lived in France and Italy, and I have never lived in either place. From what I hear, it's fairly similar.
Let's be honest, we don't have a really good reputation of bureaucracy in France.
Yeah, but I think it's slightly better than Italy. But I can't speak from personal experience because I've only ever lived in France.
Okay. But better ask for help. And Jessica is asking if she has been she has seen 6 months temporary visas, but not 12, she's saying. Is it possible to get a annual one if you're retired and to spend half of the time in France?
So if you so a temporary visa can be anywhere from 4 to 12 months, and the things that are going to determine that are your financial resources, the length of time of your temporary healthcare policy, and the length of your accommodation. So, if you have a visa for a full year, then you can theoretically come and go as you please, but you're not establishing residence in any kind of way. You do have to be a little bit careful, though, because even like a visa isn't the only or even the main sort of criteria for establishing tax residence. So if you get a 1-year temporary visa every year and you're spending 7 months of the year in France and you are doing a lot of stuff in France, then you can still find yourself being a tax resident even if you don't mean to. So my recommendation would be, if you're like wanting to spend 4 or 5 months in France or 6 months, like get a visa for that trip and make sure you limit it.
Okay, perfect. We will get back to questions after each session and presentation. So stay tuned, and we will get back to Allison and everyone after. But we will just jump with Alex. Thank you very much, Allison, and see you in a few. And we will follow up with all the financial, tax planning, taxes. Thank you very much, Alex, for being with us today. I will let you present what you can offer and what to do when you want to settle to France. And we will take a few questions after and at the end. And just to remind you, don't hesitate. We are live, so ask your questions. And we will also share like our speakers' contact at the end.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Clement. And yeah, I can weigh in on that question. I would say French bureaucracy is easier than Italian. So I would certainly say that is true. So I'm Alex Ingrim. I'm the CEO of Liberty Atlantic Advisors. We are a US registered investment advisor that helps Americans that are moving to or living in Portugal, Spain, France, or Italy. So I have a special affinity for France because I've lived there previously. I got a master's degree in France as well, and I actually met my wife in France. So it holds a very special place in my heart. So the first piece that we look at when you are looking at moving to France is just the fact that you are likely to become a French tax resident. Like Allison said, there are really no ways anymore to be what's called a tax nomad, where you're not a tax resident anywhere. So the rules for French tax residency are pretty clear. So it's the amount of time that you spend in the country. So if you spend over 183 days, you're likely to become a French tax resident. But also, they look at the entire picture surrounding your life. So if your main residence, or your main place of abode, as it's called, is in France, then you could become tax resident. Or if the center of your economic or family life is in France, then you can become tax resident as well. So it's not just looking at the amount of time that you spend in France. It's actually looking at the entire picture as well. And for Americans, being a US citizen or green card holder means that you're liable for US taxes on your worldwide income and asset base. So we have what's called a citizenship-based taxation system, where France has a residency-based taxation system. And so it's very likely impossible for Americans that are living in France to become tax residents of both countries. And in that instance, you refer to the double taxation agreement. So think of the US-France double taxation agreement as an agreement between both countries about who gets to tax your income streams first. So we like to think of it as an agreement that helps us as citizens avoid double taxation. And yeah, that's absolutely true. But it's also primarily a tool for the countries to clarify who is getting to tax what, which rules get used. And so it's much more a tool for each country as it is for us as the citizens. So if you're moving to France, just think, okay, I'm going to have to file taxes in the US and I'm going to have to file in France. And most importantly, you're going to have to play by both sets of rules. And that's really key as we kind of flesh out what it means to be tax resident in each country. So for Americans, we have a really special and specific situation in France. Our double taxation agreement is highly favorable. So big picture, if you have British friends and neighbors, if you have Dutch friends and neighbors in France, living in France next to you, what happens for you tax-wise as an American does not apply to them, and vice versa. So you need to be really careful about your sources when you're actually looking at and trying to research information about taxation in France when you're American. So the double taxation agreement essentially dictates that US retirement account income, Social Security distributions, so things like 401k distributions, IRA distributions, defined benefit pensions from work in the US, and Social Security are all taxed by the US at US income tax rates, and you get a corresponding French tax credit. So why is this so advantageous? Well, it means that a lot of the planning that you did in the US, so investing through a 401k, having a Roth IRA, which remains tax-free in France, all of that is still valid. It's still really useful. And when you contrast that to how either other nationalities might be treated in France, or if you just went across the border to Spain, France is a much more tax efficient jurisdiction for Americans with either a large financial asset base or with retirement accounts than almost any other country in Europe. US domiciled investments, so things like, think of US ETFs, US mutual funds, American stocks, so American company stocks, American bonds, things like US treasuries, they can also benefit from the treaty. So it takes quite a bit of work to go through the treaty and figure out which investments benefit. But when they do, they only get taxed at US capital gains tax rates, and you pay tax on dividend and interest income to the US as well. So that can be really helpful to kind of lower your overall tax bill. And like I said, a lot of US-based planning is still really valid in France. So you don't have to change everything that you're doing for retirement just because you're moving to France. Now, we've talked about a lot of the good things, but there are some things that make planning in France difficult and different. So estate planning is probably the real key to think about if you're making a move and you have beneficiaries or heirs that you really want to consider. So estate taxes are considerably higher than American estate taxes, and they start at a much lower point. So when you think about the US, most people don't have a federal estate tax problem. The exemption has gone up to $15 million per person. So a married couple would have a $30 million exemption. In France, it's based on other factors. It's based on your beneficiary's relationship to you. And I mean, the exemptions can start extremely low. So you really do need to take into account the fact that you'll need to work on estate planning if you're going to move. Likewise, trust-based planning just doesn't work. Trusts are transparent. There's additional reporting obligations when you have a trust and you're in France. So it's just not the same thing as it was back in the US. So consult in a very specific and specialized estate planning lawyer in France. Talk to a French tax lawyer. That's the person to go to talk about this. And then just for some awareness, there are wealth taxes on property holdings. It depends, if it's a French property, it depends on if it's a US property, the value of the holding. So all of these things can determine whether you have a wealth tax liability. But suffice to say, if you have a really large real estate portfolio, it's worth, again, speaking to a French tax lawyer about what this might mean down the road for you in France. And as Allison alluded to, when you live and work in France, it's very likely that you're going to be taxed on your earnings. And it's really important to have some awareness that French tax rates are higher than US tax rates. So you could have a slightly or significantly bigger liability in France than you had back home in the US. So if you're considering working, that's something to be really aware of. And then just finally, this applies to Americans wherever we go abroad. But when you're looking at moving abroad and you are talking to people locally about what they're doing to mitigate their taxes, a lot of the local strategies, so something in France like an assurance vie, which can help with estate planning, it can help with tax planning, that is not US tax efficient. And a lot of French domestic strategies might not be US tax efficient. And remember, you have to play by both sets of rules here. So whenever you get advice on the French side for how to mitigate your taxes, you need to check it against the US side and vice versa. So that's a really important piece of the planning puzzle. So what are some potential complications that can arise? So one thing that we see pretty often is just people needing to maintain access to the US financial system and not really sure how they should go about it, or not planning ahead of time for the fact that they might still want a US bank account, because again, they might actually be paying more taxes in the US than in France. Local things like French mutual funds, French ETFs, European ETFs in general, these are usually classified as passive foreign investment companies. They are not US tax efficient. While it might be attractive to invest in foreign mutual funds because they're denominated in euros, they actually will be penalized in the US. So that's something that's really important to pay attention to. And then I think probably one of the biggest things is just, and I've lived in Europe for over 15 years. It's just when you run into the lack of local knowledge of American considerations. So when you go into the bank and your banker tells you that there's all of these great products that you can invest in to improve your tax position, and then all of a sudden, you go back and check it with your US accountant, and it's really not fit for purpose for the US side. So I'd say pay really close attention to, and advocate for yourself as an American. You are a dual tax resident. Your situation is very specific, and it's very different than a lot of other people that are around you. This is just a quick piece. Allison mentioned a little bit about salaries. We like to point out that there is a difference between what most people are getting paid in the US and what the average salary is in France and in Europe and generally, to be honest. France ranks near the OECD average for annual salary, but that can be considerably lower still than the US. So if you're a job hunter, if you're someone who's looking to work in France, be really aware of what that means as far as salary expectations. I was once in that boat a long time ago. It's really important to just be clear about how people are quoting salaries, what they look like. It's also important to be clear on what it might mean for your retirement and for your retirement planning in general. So just as far as putting together an action plan for moving to France, I think it's really key to consult a tax lawyer and either eliminate or adjust your trust-based planning. So there are some situations where a trust is probably still beneficial, but really actually speak with a French tax lawyer. These things, these rules between the US and France, there is an estate tax treaty, but these are exceptionally complicated rules. So it's very important to make sure that you understand and are informed about what your options and what your choices are. Definitely create an estate plan if you have specific beneficiaries, if you have kids that you really want to ensure you pass on your wealth to, definitely do that. And then the US financial system is super tax efficient because of the double taxation agreement between the two countries. So prioritizing any savings via the US financial system is probably going to save you some tax dollars. And yeah, just if you can contribute towards a Roth while you're still living and working in France, that can be a great retirement strategy, which isn't always something that's kind of appreciated by the cross-border planning community. So I know we will take Q&A later, and we've covered a lot of different stuff, but over to you, Clement.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's clear, but sorry, it has to be a bit short. But Cindy wanted to have like an example with the double taxation. Can you give an example with numbers?
In terms of what, like a tax rate?
Yes, like the situation where you get a double tax and maybe just having a global idea of like with a few numbers.
Yeah, so you don't get taxed twice. So that's the real key, right? In almost no situation are you going to get taxed twice. So let's take an example of someone who has a primary U.S. obligation. So let's say that you are going to sell Microsoft stock, and you were going to sell, and you had a gain of $100,000, and your tax liability in the U.S. is $15,000 for long-term capital gains tax. You would pay the $15,000 in the U.S., and then you would go file your French taxes, and you'd get a corresponding French tax credit for the amount that you owed in the US. So a credit eliminates your liability in France. So you only end up paying US capital gains taxes. So that 15% would probably be 30% in France. So US long-term capital gains tax rates are kind of half what they are in France. If it depends, if it's income, then it depends on a lot of different aspects if you're actually working. So the comparisons can get really complex, but just know that in very few circumstances would you get actually double taxed. The tax is getting offset by one country or another. As long as you pay tax somewhere, you're going to be okay.
Okay. That's pretty reassuring. And a quick question about Aleta, who is asking, she's a trustee of her parents' trust. Is that an issue?
I mean, look, the trust questions, you can't answer those without any context, and I'm certainly not qualified to answer them.
And what about the life insurance? It's a pretty deep talk as well.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on French or US life insurance, but assurance vie is, usually that's kind of a no-go. If you're investing in a French assurance vie, it's typically not something that you'd want to do.
Okay, we have more questions, but we will get back to them right after Hélène and Tom presentation. So stay tuned as well, and let's follow up with all the fund transfers. Thank you, Alex, and talk to you right after the presentations. Hélène, are you with us?
I'm here.
Yes, perfect. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's talk a bit about money transfer.
Yeah. So Currencies Direct is a company that exists since '96. We're expert in transferring money overseas. So the most important thing is always, if you want a visa with Allison or you have CPA questions, tech questions, it's always a question about money. And we are experts in that, to helping people moving the money around. And like you can see over here, the Eiffel Tower, it always starts with Paris, because a lot of Americans are always talking about Paris and how nice it is. And a lot of our clients, a lot of Americans, I help them moving around already their money to Paris and France. And I will give a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm originally from the Netherlands. I lived for 25 years in France, so I'm a native French speaker. My husband is French. And I moved 11 years ago to the US to help Americans moving money around to France and Europe, and helping everyone getting the best rates compared with banks. And what we do is really helping Americans buying properties in France. And the fact is, a lot of Americans are coming to us to say, we need to transfer euro, but how are we going to do that? So the difference about the US dollar euro every time, it's really an important point, because, for example, in December, US dollar euro, we are almost about 104. At the moment, we are about 1.18. So a lot of Americans are losing 18% with the transfer of money. And that really can make a difference if you're buying a property, or if you just going to retire in France, because if you want to move every month your pension funds or your social security to Europe, it's really important to secure the rates. The fact is that Currencies Direct is really doing that the whole day around, so moving money around the globe. American banks in America are not doing it as a core business, moving money around, so often they will charge you more. And the fact is that a lot of clients that I had told me that the difference between Currencies Direct and our company is really about 3 to 4%. So it's really a good thing to get a consultation with us and to ask about the difference that you want to do. And the fact is that a lot of Sorry, I have an issue with my screen. So the important thing is also that a lot of banks are not giving a support of 24 hours. The fact is that we have a global company with 20 head office everywhere. So you can just call us, chat online, and we will come back to you with experts. We speak different languages. So if you're thinking of purchasing a French property, it's important for the deposit. It starts with a deposit. So in that case, you need to transfer funds quite quickly to the notary in France. So in that case, we can secure the deposit amount already for you. Even if you don't have a French bank account, we can receive the funds for you and then transfer it to the notary directly. We lock in the rate, you know exactly the amount of euros that you're getting. A lot of people are a little bit stressed to transfer funds overseas. So the fact that you have a dedicated account manager that knows how to deal the whole process, we take care about it to transfer the funds. And also the fact that you need 3 months later in France to change the important amount of the proceeds that you need to proceed to the notary. In that case, we can lock in the rate. We can do forward contracts to secure your rate. And then you know exactly how many euros you need to buy and how many dollars you need to get to us to transfer the funds to the notary. An important thing is also that we can ensure you or assure you that we can put you in contact with a bank in France, because a lot of US citizens have difficulties to open a bank account due to the US citizenship. And we do have contacts directly in France. If you need help with that, we can arrange that and schedule an appointment directly with a local bank. Like that, you can set up a local account if you need to pay electricity bills or water bills or tax bills. In case, we can help you with that too. And Allison, of course, can help you with the visas and other stuff. So what is involved with buying a property? If you're buying a property in France, you need all kinds of payments. You need also competitive pricing about foreign exchange. The solutions for every stage, we can give them to you. The most important thing, and it's like Allison and Alex said, it's important to have a clear picture of what you want to do. So we can schedule an appointment with you. You can see the QR code. You can schedule a meeting with me for 30 minutes. And we can go step by step your needs and say exactly your game plan. If it's for 3 months, 6 months, or if you want to just rent a property. So we can help you with that too. Important thing for us is that we're simplifying international payments. We're here since '96 and over 500,000 clients. We have a lot of, we won a lot of awards due to our customer service and backup and compliance. Also, we have a good compliance department. And like you can see, we have a secure global network. We have the same guarantees as banks. So our licenses like bank, we guarantee the funds. So as you can see, service, payment, and forex exchange experts, we can lock in a rate for you. We can schedule a call, and we will put you in place with an experienced trader who can negotiate with you the rate and schedule your whole planning and forward contract. So the most important thing for us is that we're since '96 already here, globally regulated and strong compliance track record. So your funds are secured with us. You can keep your funds also with us for a moment if you don't have bank accounts overseas. So it can be in euros or even in other currencies if you need. But we can pay out also invoices if you're not ready yet to move abroad to France, or if you were in process to purchase something in France, but that it fell through. Sometimes it happens. So in that case, we can keep the funds on account and secure the rate and transfer the funds whenever you need it. So a lot of things are happening in France, of course, in Paris, but a lot of Americans are moving at the moment to the south of France. And I'm more than happy to answer your questions. And if you want, you can contact us directly through the QR code, or otherwise by email, or schedule a call. And even at the end of the presentation, you can ask questions. So thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Hélène.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we will also share the replay and your contact on Frenchly. But don't hesitate to ask your questions right now. Jessica is saying that the rates of the dollar and the euros are not the best now to transfer funds from the US to France. Do you have any advice or to wait, or maybe not to do it now?
The most important thing, I had some clients that were in process to purchase a property. They locked in the deposit already in December when the rate was around 104. Now it's 14%, so they have 14% less, so it's more expensive for them. So it's really important to plan this. It's a little bit like with the visa. It depends what they want and which period, because we can lock in a rate with a forward contract. So they can lock in a rate for a certain period. And at the moment, it's true, it's not the best moment to purchase, but if you want to make a dream, it's never the right moment. So it's important to compare rates. And it's true that we can discuss this and lock in the best rate for the client.
Perfect. Okay, great. And we will actually follow up with all the property projects you might have. Thank you, Hélène, and we will get back to you after for a few questions right after Tom's presentation. Tom from French Plans. Thank you, Tom, for joining us. We'll talk about property, real estate projects you can work on, from small ones to big castle in France?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 15 minutes to talk about a massive subject, so I'm going to fly through this as quick as I can. But I'm going to talk to you briefly today about property in France, buying property in France, where those properties, where you're looking for those properties, and what the opportunities and risks are when we're thinking about buying in France. A little bit about me. I'm an architect registered in France, a managing director of French Plans. We're an architects and planning consultancy, and I also founder of Meridian Grey, which is a property consultancy. They kind of pair together quite well on your journey. Okay, so France is, by US standards, not a big country, but by European standards, pretty big. And generally speaking, the expat Anglophone US market is focused on the west half of France, as well as the southern section of France and up into the Alps, with a little wobble out over into Paris. The American market is quite strong over in Paris, and within those regions there are particular pockets of France which are particularly popular. One is Brittany and up to the northwest and along the northwest Normandy coast, the Duijn in the center of the southwest, and obviously the alpine areas of the Pyrenees, the Alps, and then down into the southeast. And each of those areas have wildly different regional variations in terms of the properties you can get, the prices you're going to pay, and the opportunities that those regions offer. So very, very briefly, in terms of the purchase process in France, it can be split down into kind of 5 titles, 5 headlines, I guess. So you have your search, which is the fun bit, right? Where you're going around, you're traveling around France. Hopefully you found your area you're going to focus on, and you're going to look at a number of different properties. You can do this a number of ways. You can come out to France, contact a load of local agents, spend your days trawling around and visiting local properties until you find the right one. One of the major differences that US clients we speak to have is that there isn't the global kind of websites where you can find hundreds of thousands of properties in France. They do kind of exist, but they don't necessarily offer all of them. And so really being focused and localized to where you're looking is a really useful thing to do. Once you find your property, you are making an offer to the agent. Usually that offer is in writing, sometimes via email, sometimes hard copy letter. This is France after all, and we love a bit of paperwork. And then when that offer is accepted, you might apply some conditions to that. You'll be offered to sign, or a compromis de vente will be drawn up, which is the promise to buy the property. It sets out all the clauses that need to be satisfied in order for you to finally purchase that property. The compromis de vente is quite a useful tool if you are looking to do works to a property, if you're looking to develop a property, put your stamp on something, because you can protect yourself within the compromis de vente with the addition of conditional clauses or additional searches that allow you to find out both the history of the property in terms of what's been done to it and whether that work is legal and up to regulation, and also to enable you to find out that the feasibility of your projects going forwards is possible. So you can enter in for instance, a conditional clause for the development of a barn, for instance, within the compromis de vente to say, as soon as I sign this compromis, I'm going to apply for some kind of planning application for the conversion of a barn. If that planning application is approved, we'll carry on through to the next phase. If it's not, we're going to pull out. We can pull out that contract, that compromis, because the property doesn't work for us anymore, and we can take back our deposit that we've paid, whether that be at the 10% level or slightly less, and you can walk away from the contract. It is a protection to you. Because the compromis de vente is a contract, and because you only have 10-day cooling off period once you have signed it, it's important to know that any future plans you have for the property are actually feasible and viable at the point at which you're contemplating signing the compromis. So it really is important to understand what you're signing up to, and that if you want to affect or use the compromis de vente as a malleable tool, you're taking that opportunity then. Once all that work has been done in the compromis de vente stage, you can then get on to signing the acte de vente. Hopefully, everything's gone through. You've got your the feasibility of your project has been made certain, and you can then move through, sign the acte de vente, and move on and grab the keys. Now, there are a number of differences with purchasing property in France, as there is compared to purchasing property in the US. Now, there's lots of debate and sometimes confusion over the role of the notaire. Now, the notaire within the purchase process in France is they are what's the word I'm looking for? They're not partisan on either side. They are neutral. That's the word. They're neutral to either both party. They're there. They are the employee of the state. They are there to make sure that the contract is legal, based on legal grounding, has good legal grounding, that the taxes are paid, and that the land registry and all the compliance work is done, so that the purchase is safe, legal, and is covered off. What they're not is a person who is on your side and looking after necessarily your interests. They are looking after your interests from a legal point of view to make sure that the contract is fair, but they're not necessarily going to advise you that you want to insert or affect any of the clauses within the within that contract. They're not necessarily, as a title company or attorney would work for you in a US property purchase. And so it's just to understand that the notaire isn't necessarily going to be looking out for you individually, but they're looking out for the whole contract, the whole agreement. Then we get onto this cooling off period, which I've discussed, is that when you sign that compromis, you have 10 days. You have 10 days to change your mind, essentially. So within that 10-day period, you can write a registered letter to the notaire to say, actually, we've changed our mind. We want to pull out of the contract. And as long as it is within those 10 days, that 10-day period, the notaire will say, okay, we'll cancel the contract. The deposit, if it has been paid, will be given back. There is also the issue of deposit and financing. It's usual that a 10% deposit is paid at the point of the compromis being signed, and that's sometimes negotiable. Sometimes you can bring that down. But there's also the issue of financing. What is quite odd in France, in French property purchase, is you kind of agree your financing once you've signed up to the property, because you're agreeing financing once you've signed the compromis. So you've signed to buy the property without really knowing you're going to get achieve financing. And so it's important, and again, it's important to understand that those clauses that can get out of jail free card can be written in to say that if you don't achieve financing, you can pull out the contract. So it's useful to understand how that works. Fees and taxes. So you will pay an agency fee, which is usually advertised when in the sale of the in the advertisement for the property. They're generally in the region of 6 to 8%. And it's important to understand what they are, because sometimes they are also negotiable. So if the price you want to pay, if the vendor doesn't want to go too low or has a top level they'll only accept, it might be worth talking to the agent, because there may be some opportunity to wriggle on the fees. There's also taxes. So you'll pay stamp duty and you'll pay a notaire fee. Now they get wrapped up as a notaire fee. Effectively, the notaire pays the stamp duty tax to the government, but it all looks as though you're paying a notaire a quite high fee. Stamp duty tax is in the region of 5.8%, and the fee you'll pay to the notaire is about 7% or so. The other major difference with French property purchase is they're not really anything associated in France officially with inspections and surveys. So unlike in the US, where you might find or usual to have a home inspection, I understand in high demand areas you might waive that right, but you have a home inspection done. In France, that doesn't often happen, and especially not amongst French buyers. But if you are looking at a property which is being renovated, or you're looking to develop a property, having a survey is often a good idea. And again, in timelines in France, the timelines compared to the US are slightly extended. Where you might be completing in the US in 90 days, it's unlikely, the earliest you would complete in France is on the 90-day, 3-month mark. You're probably looking between 3 and 6 months rather than anything shorter than that. So who are the main characters in that property purchase? One, you have the agent. The agent is contracted with the vendor to sell the property. They are not necessarily again on your side of the fence. So it's important to understand where they're contracted to and what their role is. There's the notaire, as I've discussed. There's the vendor who is selling the property, and there's you. So there's not many key characters within the property purchase itself. It's quite a limited number compared to other countries around the world, and compared to the US, where there might be a whole raft or a wider team to put together that purchase. So what are the opportunities of French property? Well, they're numerous, really. There's lots of opportunities to unlock hidden value in French property, especially properties which have been left derelict or left empty for a long time. There's the opportunities to secure investment potential, whether that be in terms of rental, so vacation rentals going forwards. If you have an idea of lifestyle choices and lifestyle changes you want to make, being able to adapt a French property to how you want to live is a great way of ensuring your French life is going to go the way you want it to go, and also to have the property for future generations and building a legacy in France for your family. So what are the risks? There are quite a few risks, and as I said, the French property purchase process is very safe in itself. It's a very legally safe process, but the risks are apparent because you are left on your own to an extent. This whole idea of caveat emptor or buyer beware exists internationally in property purchase and is very explicit in French property purchase, in that whilst you will receive a set of diagnostic reports, for instance, they cover a very limited range of issues. And in those issues, they will identify if those risks are present, not necessarily if that risk has impacted the house. So understanding the context of the house, the structural integrity of the house, can limit the possible future hidden costs, especially if you're looking to renovate or develop something. Understanding what might be something which needs fixing or repairing or doing work to on day one is important to understand in your budgeting and financial planning. There are also urban planning hurdles. Not every barn in France is possible to convert, so it's important to understand early in the process if, for example, your move is predicated on you being able to convert a chateau into an event space or a wedding venue. Understanding that is possible in planning terms is important to know before you commit or before you make that final jump to sign that act of on. So understanding and doing your due diligence really is important, and then also understanding that the financing situation in France isn't the same as it is in the US. And if you are looking to borrow money to do some work, it's important to understand how that works as well. So who's on your team when you come through your property purchase? Well, you, majoritively. As I said, caveat emptor exists. There isn't the industry in France really that is evolved around filling that due diligence gap. There are professionals there. So you need to you need to make sure you are asking the right questions. And if it means that you need to phone me up, for instance, and ask me to ask the right questions for you, that's a great way of going. You can employ property consultants, architects, planning consultants. There are buyer's agents available to consult in France. You have to make sure that buyer's agents are registered properly. They should be registered in the same way as estate agents are. And you can employ surveyors to undertake property inspections for you. That's absolutely a thing you can do. And it's useful to do that if you are looking to renovate or the property is particularly old, or it's a chateau with an absolutely huge roof that is likely to cost you hundreds of thousands of euros to fix if it's in a poor state. So I would advise people to make your move sensibly, to ask the right questions, to understand and get to grips with the differences in the property process. Identify in that kind of journey where you might think that there might be a pinch point or an area of understanding you don't quite have, and whether that's asking the right people the right questions at the right time. Just understanding that timeline of when to ask those questions and when to do the work is quite important in the property process. French property is great, and it's really the opportunities are huge and varied, but you just have to make sure you do the background legwork to make sure that the vision you have for your French life is achievable, and almost to guarantee that's achievable before committing to making the jump to purchase. So at this point, I'd quite like to introduce Darren, who's a client of ours, who we have just gone through this process with. If we can have Darren on screen, is that possible? No, is Darren not there? Oh, there's Darren. Hey, how are you doing?
Hi, Tom.
Hey. So I thought it'd be useful just to spend some very briefly, just to kind of you go through your process of buying your barn in the middle of France, and to talk to the viewers and people watching how what your experience of that was when we became involved in your project, and how we've kind of helped you through the process from that point, if you don't mind. So a little bit, if you could give a short description about what the property is.
Okay, so the property I ended up purchasing is a barn. We all have that dream. Most of us have that dream of turning a barn into our dream home. And that was one of mine since I was a teenager in high school. So I set about the search, just trying to Google properties in France, and that is not an easy task. So it was going through a lot of different websites, finding a bunch of different real estate sites, and you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And the property that I ended up getting is beautiful, and it was just kind of an oopsie, because I checked a box. I hadn't checked a box prior, and this was the first property that popped up. I saw it immediately, and my little heart was up in my throat, and I said, I need this. Contacted the real estate agent right away, and she said, it's a very special property. I would be glad to help you with it. So that was the start.
Yeah, you came to us with the kind of the feasibility bit done, didn't you? Because you came to us with what's called a CUB in France. Did you do that, or was that already done by the previous owner?
What? I had that done.
You had that.
I had that done.
Great. And you had that done at the compromis phase of the work? So right. So Darren came to us with the feasibility of the conversion from the barn, from agricultural building to a residential property already done, which made my life slightly easier because we didn't have to do a huge amount of background legwork. But then just explain to you the folks just your experience of kind of how you came to find us and what your experience of working with us has been since.
So I found you guys through my real estate agent. She was wonderful. And she was the one that said, hey, let's get this switched from agricultural to residential. It'll be easier for your architects. And she says French plans are the ones that she would recommend. And I will tell everybody watching and everybody that'll listen to me, French architects, Tom and his team, have been an absolute dream to work with. They have made it so easy. because I'm based here in the States. I go over to France every once in a while, but I'm not always able to either get down to the property or to speak with anyone in person. So having them on my team to take care of all these things for me has been an absolutely amazing experience. I would suggest French Plans to Tom and his team to everyone that is looking to buy property in France. Honestly, I have no complaints, and they have been my absolute heroes.
Perfect. See, the right clients to get on screen. Thanks. Would you say, were there any pinch points, particular risks or things you perhaps would have done differently if you'd done it again, or was the process pretty smooth all the way through?
Thankfully for me, the process was pretty smooth. I'm one of those people that once I set my mind to something, I jump, and I'll ask questions later. So the fear didn't really play into anything. It was a little bit scary transferring money back and forth, but you know, it is what it is. And if you really want to do something, you're going to figure out a way to do it, whether you jump first, ask questions later, or you do all your research first. So I think either way, if it's something you want to do it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
You too.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, and for the testimonial. It was great. So if you feel like it, it's do it. That's the conclusion we can say.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back. I mean, let's jump on the questions we have. Maybe we can have everyone on screen to answer. And once again, thank you all. Thank to all of you for being here and making it possible today. We had another question about that was pretty interesting about giving up an American citizenship. If someone, let me just find it. Basically, someone wanted to get retired in France and was wondering if he could just give up the American citizenship to just keep the French one and pay tax in France.
If you're already French, maybe, but you have to have another citizenship before you give up U.S. citizenship.
Oh, sure. Yes.
If you're retired, and if you're retired and not paying any French tax on your income, that was a question too, and you're unlikely to get naturalized in France. So for starters, that, and then the rest is Alex.
Yeah, I mean, there are some potential tax consequences of giving up your U.S. citizenship too. So that's something to always take into account. You have to get really specific legal advice on the consequences of expatriating formally, which is when you give up your U.S. citizenship. And then I think there's also just the concept of why you would want to do that in France, particularly because you have this tax treaty that might benefit you. I always kind of say to people, you've got to have some pretty profound and substantial reasons to go down that route. So it's something to certainly consult legal counsel about and take very, very seriously.
Okay, good advice. And we just mentioned it before about the life insurance. Cynthia is asking, she has a US life insurance fund and she wants to borrow against it for living expense in France. What are the French tax implications for that?
I don't know if there are any. You're essentially just taking out a loan against a policy that you own. So I would certainly, make sure that you speak with a French accountant or a tax lawyer. But, certainly in US terms, that's why those policies exist, is so that you can borrow against the value of them. So that is just very normal US financial planning when you have a life insurance policy with a cash value.
Okay. Matthew was asking, and I think, Allison, you answered in the chat, but just to share the question, with the visitor pass, can you move freely in Schengen zone, or does the 180-day rule apply?
Sure. So when you live in France and have a visa for France, you're still technically limited to 90 out of 180 days in all the other Schengen countries. So you can't like, have a 1-year visa for France and spend 6 months in Italy, for example. That being said, most of the time the EU countries are not checking or scanning your passport at the border between them. So it's a little bit of an honor system. Two, it's obviously different if you're on vacation in other countries versus like if you're trying to, live in multiple countries consecutively, but only with a French visa. And yeah, and I mean, like if you are traveling around, like your days in France don't count. So if you get a 6-month visa for France, you could theoretically spend 90 days before that in Italy and then 90 days after that, like in Germany, and that would be fine.
Okay, thank you. Tom, what would be the timeline for a project to buy a property? It's pretty vague, but how long would it take to plan a like buying a property and rebuilding it?
Rebuilding it. Okay. So,
Not rebuilding
so as I said, the property purchase process generally takes about 3 months. If you want any of the initial works, feasibility works within the compromise stage, you can add another 2 months into that. So you might be looking at 3 to 5 months to get that done. Planning applications in France, so you work with us to develop the design, for instance, might take 6 to 10 weeks. And the planning application takes between 2 and 3 months, depending on the project. If you're looking at a chateau or something that's protected, you can add another month. So all in all, you could have to the point where you could start building. You could be there month 6, I guess, would be a sensible place to start. Preparing a timeline on. So if you planned for a 6-month purchase process, planning process, a design process, then that would probably be quite.
Okay, we don't really hear you well, but I think we got it. And a quick question for you, Allison, as well. Can you just explain a bit about the health insurance between like the French one and the international health insurance?
Sure. So when you're applying for a visitor visa, technically you are required to get a health insurance policy that will cover you for catastrophic purposes for your first year in France. So when you request a visa from TLS, which is the company that processes the visa applications, sends them along to the French consulate, you have to show proof of a healthcare policy that will cover you for 365 days in the entire Schengen space, 0 deductible, 30,000 euros of coverage, includes repatriation. Those are the 5 criteria of a private healthcare policy. Now, you have to be really careful about the policies that you get because there's only a couple of policies that exist, and some brokers price them much more expensive than others. You have to be careful. And some of them are actually travel insurance policies, so they're not really visa appropriate. Now, technically, the only other category of people that would have to provide this healthcare policy would be an EU citizen who is sponsoring their spouse to get a carte de séjour in France. The EU citizen would have to demonstrate that they are covered by a healthcare system or have healthcare coverage to sort of sponsor their non-EU spouse for a French residence permit. Anybody else who is going to be working or enrolled as a student or anything like that, technically you're not required to show proof of a healthcare plan. You start working pretty quickly, and when you start working or you register your business or whatever, that starts the process of getting you into the French healthcare system. That being said, we did get a request today for somebody applying for a micro-entrepreneur visa who was requested to have a policy. Working, you can register for the French healthcare system right away, and you show documents related to your work situation. You register as micro-entrepreneur. Your business registration will automatically forward your request to URSSAF. That will start the process of assigning you a social security number and getting you set up in the system. So you're covered relatively quickly after you arrive. If you're on a visitor visa or you're married to a French citizen, but you're not working yet, you don't have any particular reason to get into the French system quickly, then it's an invitation for the French healthcare system really quickly to register, because it can also take several months to be processed. If you've had a name change, if you have a lot of documents, if you take a long time to find long-term housing in your name, if you don't have utility bills in your name, all of these things can extend the process and the length of time that it takes to process your registration. You really want it to be done by the end of the first year so that you can use your registration on the healthcare system as part of your visa renewal. I could do a whole hour on just explaining the French healthcare system, so I'm going to stop there. But it is something that comes up a lot in our free Q&As as well.
Once again, we will share your contact as for every of you. We will share the contacts and the replay after the session. So stay tuned on Frenchy.us. A quick question for you, Alex. If you own rental properties in the US, but you spend more than 6 months in France, would you be taxed in the US on your rental income, or and have the tax you pay deduced on your French tax return? It's a question from Haifa.
Yeah. I mean, in general, that's typically how the double taxation agreements work when you have an asset that's located physically in one country instead of the other. So the country where it's physically located has the primary taxation rate. Obviously, there's some things about how you structure that income and about whether it's wrapped up in LLCs or things like that. There's also just the idea that there are several deductions that are always available in the US, particularly regarding real estate income. So don't take it for granted that when you go to calculate the taxes that you owe in France, you're going to use the same calculation method. So I think that's one thing that really trips a lot of people up, is when you actually look at the tax that you owe in different systems, because you have two different systems at play, sometimes there's a different calculation method that's used. So just something to be careful about. Rental income is a very particular subject. So again, speak to a French tax lawyer.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, another question for you, Allison, for the visas, because it's a pretty big topic. Can you obtain, Alisa is asking if you can obtain a temporary visa for 12 months and decide to stay after the 12. And from the US, can you use your 3 months and get a visa? I don't know if it's really clear.
Okay. So when you're applying for a visa, you have to apply from a country where you have residence or citizenship. So that means that if you're American, and that's your only nationality, and you have resided in the US, you have to apply for your visa in the US before you come to France. The only exception for that is somebody who is the spouse of an EU citizen who is not French. So, if you're the spouse of an Italian citizen, you apply for a carte de séjour after arriving in France within 90 days. So in terms of the 12-month visa, there's two different things here. There's and there's a couple of different kinds of temporary visas. You will see around the internet, a lot of people will say VLSTS. I'm applying for a VLSTS. Well, VLSTS means Visa de Long Séjour, valant titre de séjour. So it is a visa that is for 12 months that turns into a residence permit when you validate it online within 90 days of arriving in France. That refers to about a dozen different visa types. It's visitor, it can be a student visa, a family visa, a profession libérale, a salarié. And so that doesn't really tell you much about the rights and obligations you have with that particular visa type. There's also a 12-month VLST, a Visa Long Séjour Temporaire, which cannot be validated online, but then it cannot be extended or renewed. So especially if you're retired, you want to make sure that you make the distinction in your visa application and that you give them enough documentation so that they can give you a renewable visa, because otherwise, like, and we've had this happen. We've had people come to us like for help renewing, and I look at their visa and I'm like, you can't renew. You have to go back to apply for a new visa in the States. And they're like, oh shoot, like we bought a house here, we sold our house in the US, we have nowhere to go. And they need to go back and get a new visa to come back. So really important to understand the difference between those two types and how you can make sure that you get the renewable one if that's what you want.
Okay, thank you very much. Still on the visa, owning a property versus renting, is it affecting the likelihood to get a visa?
No.
No, okay.
I mean, it helps in the sense that, okay, you have a financial requirement for the visa, and you know, if you own property, then they can be a little bit more lenient in terms of what they're looking for in your bank accounts. But owning property in and of itself does not like directly impact your ability to get or renew a visa.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much to the four of you for coming and presenting all those Living the French Dream session. What is the program? We will pursue that today at 2 p.m. Eastern time in the US, 11 a.m. if you are on the West Coast. Where to relocate on the southwest of France. Tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern time, we will talk about Paris and Île-de-France, and then Wednesday would be Southeast and the French Riviera, and Thursday Brittany, Loire, and Normandy as well. And Friday we will talk about the Northeast with la région Grand Est, Bourgogne, Alsace. Thank you again to all of you for attending, for speaking. Stay tuned on Frenchly.us. And have a great rest of the day. And a few words about our sponsors today. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Ellen, for supporting the event as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Alex.
for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Take care.
Bonjour and welcome. I'm Allison Lounes, founder of Your Franceformation, and we're thrilled to be sponsoring this year's Dream Life in France Summit with Frenchly. At Your Franceformation, we help individuals, couples, and families turn their dream of living in France into reality with expert support for visa applications, relocation planning, and everything that comes after you arrive in France. Whether you're just starting to explore your move or you're ready to take the leap, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Start by checking out our book Foolproof French Visas and attending one of our free monthly Q&A sessions. And let's start making your dream life in France happen together.